You asked me earlier about, were there anyone that stood out that you just knew were different, right? This was the first time that someone stood out that we knew was different. So my junior year, as we're getting ready for the playoffs, we bring up members of the JV, and then we bring up one kid from freshman, just like myself that year when I got brought up, 2 years before. Right. And that kid's name was Reggie Bush.
I don't do the most, but I do a lot. I'ma make a toast, cause we still alive. No big, I feel like Pac. Shoot a shot.
Well, folks, looks like another heartbreaking loss for the Tigers. They go down in a nail-biter, 13-17. Back to you, Jim.
Yeah, coming in hot, just like the fajita. I write what I live, my life in the speaker. I'm nice with the flow, just like the demeanor. I'm feeding my fam, I'm feeding the meter. They got the iron while I got the steamer. I bring the fire, but you never seen her. I testified on
1317 Sports presents the Get It Off Your Chest podcast, sponsored by no one.
When people sometimes before talk about me, they say, "Man, you're so disciplined, or you're so intense, or you're so focused." Where does that come from? Well, it comes from experiences, man, and how I grew up. Being the youngest of three boys, being at a disadvantage when it comes to just athletic ability, and always being looked at as the underdog. Like, I wanted to prove myself every single day. And going to Seattle was another opportunity for me to do that, to be around college players at UW, training with elite speed coaches, and just playing another year of football with older kids, knowing that I would come back to San Diego and enter my freshman year of high school already playing with 9th and 10th graders the year before as an 8th grader.
Right. So you come in just having that confidence, and just, again, having that much more to play for, when it comes to now, your mom, dealing with cancer. And, I always say, people, you need a chip, you need a why.
Yeah.
You have professional athletes that have kids who, their fathers or their mothers, they came from some obscure situations growing up, and then they have, they make it to the professional level where they make good money, and then they, their kids don't have to go through that. And so it's harder for, you don't see as many. You see it in basketball and football, but it's not as rare. It's not as often as it should be when it comes to like professional athletes' kids. But again, I see why, because they don't have to yearn for anything. They didn't have to, they didn't have to want for anything. So it's hard to kind of find that why in that chip. But you have that why in that chip as you're moving through football and you're getting into your freshman year of high school now, and that's where we are now. Mm-hmm. So we're at your freshman year of high school now. When you're in middle school, and now they have these farm schools. We call it the farm system, where the cluster schools is what we call them in Georgia, right. Where you have the elementary school 1 mile. A matter of fact, we're all on the same campus. It may be like a 200 yards difference between the schools. So you have the elementary school, you have the middle school, and then they roll into the high school. And then, of course, the middle school coaches basically use some of the same book as some of the same playbook as the high school. So that way the transition is easier. Now, did you know that you were going to go to the high school that you went to out of middle school, or was it one of those that you chose to go?
Yeah, I knew I was going to go to where I went. So my last year playing Pop Warner, I was in 7th grade, right? And then I moved to Seattle for my 8th grade year. But up until, I would say probably my 5th, 6th, and 7th grade year playing Pop Warner, there was high school coaches that came to the games. And we knew that I was going to go to the Helix High School in La Mesa while I was playing in middle school. Where I grew up and where our house is located, I should have went to the high school across the street in Spring Valley called Montmcgill. Now, both my brothers went there. My mom wanted to send me to a Catholic school called St. Augustine, but really it was my brother Joe who was kind of the catalyst of pushing us to go to Helix. So at that time, and I know everyone does it now, but at that time there weren't a lot of high schools that were actually recruiting and going to the Pop Warner games. But the Helix coaches and the staff, and this is part of what's made the school such a dynasty over the years, is because they always had this pipeline of Pop Warner kids coming because they were actively recruiting them.
Right.
But at that time, I was out of the district. I was supposed to go to Mont McGill. And so when we decided that we were going to go to Helix, I had to actually use somebody's address that lived in La Mesa. And we had to, my parents, and this is my parents again, like I was focused and I knew what I wanted to do, and they were there to support it. So they found friends of the family that lived in La Mesa whose kids went to Helix, and they were able to put some of their bills in my parents' names for their address. And that's how I originally got into Helix. Now, a year later, my sophomore year, Helix turns into a charter school, and you could essentially live anywhere in San Diego and be able to go. But at that point, it was very like, oh, you live with so-and-so in La Mesa. And sometimes I would forget, like, oh, yeah, I do. I live there, knowing damn well I live across the street from Mont McGill in Spring Valley. And growing up in middle school, like where we grew up in Spring Valley, you kind of have Spring Valley, Lemon Grove, and La Mesa, right? It's just the triangle of kind of Southwest East County. And, all the kids that I went to middle school with and grew up with either went to Helix, went to Mont McGill, or went to Monte Vista. So we were all very interconnected, and we were all still very close. So when I went to Helix, it definitely ruffled a lot of feathers of kids that I had grown up with, because at that point there's starting to be a division, right, of people that are going to do very well in high school, and that this is their sport. And as I got older, I started to separate a little bit from the pack. So when I was able and made that decision to go to Helix, it was big news at that time. And it didn't sit well with a lot of people.
Now, when it came to Helix, and shout out to Helix High School, it is definitely powerhouse in high school sports, in particularly football, out in the San Diego, in the California area, and just in the nation. And they have produced some quite a bit of talent, and when it comes to football. So now you prefaced that your brothers went to this school across the street from your house, and but they wanted you to go to Helix, and it had everything to do with the talent level of the players, as well as like just the curriculum, and the school in general was just better. Was it just, hey, they have a football powerhouse over there?
Yeah, it was a combination of all of that. Helix historically has been very dominant in football and sports in general. But one thing that a lot of people don't realize is Helix is a high academic school. And that was a big decision of my brothers and my parents getting on board of wanting me to go to Helix was for all of those reasons. And at that time too, it was, they were having better opportunities and better connections with college coaches to get recruiting and to get kids scholarships. And that was my ultimate goal. So yeah, that was all those factors played into the wanting to go to Helix was for that. Helix now, is a blue ribbon school. It's one of the top academic schools in the nation.
Yep.
So I just think that foundation was all played into the decision, and it was one of the best decisions I've ever made.
Right. Now you go there, you're there your freshman year, JCass, and you're roaming the hallways. You don't have a lot of friends there, so you're like this outsider. You probably you know some people, but you don't, again, that's not the school you're supposed to kind of farm into. And so you're going in there, going to Helix with all this tradition, all this this program, history is just, spectacular. And you're coming there to make a name for yourself. I know you, bro. Like you like, hey, now I gotta recreate. I gotta recreate myself, the same me, but even better. Now you go to your freshman year. Now, do you actually feel like you have to prove yourself going into your freshman year playing football at Helix?
Yeah, absolutely. I've always had the mindset of having to prove myself, even to this day. Every morning when I wake up, that's one of the first things I say to myself is,
my boy,
prove yourself every day. But yeah, Helix, I did have, it was half and half. Half the people I went to middle school with and elementary went to Mont McGill. The other half went to Helix. The other half went to Monte Vista. So I knew some people going into Helix. but I also was very aware of the tradition and the winning tradition and all of the greats that came before. And that's one thing that is very significant, I would say, about Helix amongst aside from other schools is that tradition.
Right.
You see the pictures and the Hall of Famers, and you have a hallway and a walk of champions. So
Whoa.
you're stepping on campus and you have already expectations to live up to. And I wanted to be a part of that. And I wanted to have my picture on the Hall of Fame, in the hallway, in the weight room. So yeah, I walked in with something to prove because I knew that I knew the history of Helix, and I knew that I wanted to be one of those people that people remembered. And I wanted to be one of the best linebackers to ever come out of Helix.
My boy, listen, motivation from everywhere. But you about to go make me feel find some cleats and some pads, my boy. I need to go run some routes out here, baby. So but you're going, you're in there, you got this mindset, you just a hungry beast, and so when you're there at Helix, you got some like-minded individuals, and we're gonna get there. But was it like when your freshman year playing, like did you start? Were you guys any good? You tell me.
Yeah, so at that time at Helix, the freshman program was like what you just previously mentioned about kind of being the feeder into varsity. Like the Helix freshman program was the best, I would say, in the state. It was ran by Coach Dave Van Mater, and his other staff, and they had been together for years. And they created this program, this summer program called CPR, right? So all incoming freshmen that played football, we came into CPR camp. And this was our 2-month weightlifting camp. And this is like a college weightlifting program. And we're freshmen, we're incoming freshmen. These are eighth graders coming in. And it was ran like you were going to the University of Alabama. We all had shirts. We had to earn these shirts. CPR stood for commitment, pride, and respect. So that was being instilled into us as eighth graders at our summer going into ninth grade, right? Learning how to work together as a team. We all had dog tags. Helix, our mascot, is the Scotty dog. So we all were given dog tags. And all the dog tags every year had numbers that were a special code. And I'll get into how significant that is as we talk about my senior year at Helix and how crazy that is. But just know that all the dog tags had numbers on that reflected codes. And after we completed CPR camp, the coaches would describe what those numbers meant, and it would all click and all make sense. So all the things that they're preaching to us during that summertime, where most eighth graders going to their ninth grade year are having a good time, right? They're going to the beach, they're having fun with their friends. And here we are, 60 kids becoming young men together in the weight room and back then there was no rules on 2-a-days. We were doing 2-a-days, we were doing 3-a-days. This is old school. We were drinking out of water hoses. We didn't have anything fancy. But we were laying the foundation, and that was why Helix's program has been so significant, is because it started there. It started with Coach Van Mater and his staff, and it was preparing us for what we were going to endure as we started to make it up to JV and to varsity at Helix. But that was it, man. It was pretty incredible.
I'm telling you, it's nostalgic, ain't it? Just going down memory lane, though, right? Going down. That's why I like doing this, man. This is therapeutic. This is that's why I call it a conversation, right? This is therapeutic. With all the guests that I've had thus far, I end up opening up, a box of just memories, and that's what life is. It's memories. This is moments and memories, and so. And I just enjoy doing this. And once again, I just appreciate you, man. Shout out to Helix High School, man. Shout out to Helix High Schools. You're freshman, you're doing CPR, you basically mini camp for NFL rookies.
Yeah.
And
really.
And this is innovative at the time because, that's a given now. And the guys and the girls in today's sports, they have so many resources now. And you had to have a foundation, and it started before our generation, right? We with the one bar helmets type, that's going way back. We ain't not that old, but even down with the uniforms being tighter and the pads being smaller, and you being able to utilize your athletic ability more in equipment now so than ever. But you guys are innovative in your training, and to building this foundation that's going to last for generations to come at Helix High School. So you're doing this. You're like, this is the program. I'm happy I made this decision because it was conducive to your work ethic already. And now your freshman year, were you guys really good? Were you mediocre? Were you horrible your freshman year, or you tell me?
Undefeated. Undefeated. We beat everybody by at least 50 points.
Whoa.
Yeah.
So you're starting. I know you're starting linebacker.
Yeah, this is essentially my second year playing freshman because
right.
I was playing freshman. I was playing with 9th and 10th graders and 8th graders in Seattle the year before. Right. So I came in and I came into high school 5'9.5", 5'10". I was always up at my almost max. So I came in at about 5'10", 185 pounds. I'm a seasoned linebacker at this point because I'd been playing the position since I was 6 years old and I never missed a year.
Hey, listen, you got that. Your heritage, bro. Y'all hard working. Hey, this man ready for the league, and he only 13 at the time, 14 years old.
And that was my mindset. That's where I wanted to go. And during that time, during CPR and we're getting all these kids, and a lot of them I grew up with and played Pop Warner with, but a lot of kids were new kids, right? They were coming from other districts, they were coming from out of town, and we really gelled during that summer, and that conduciveness carried on to our sophomore, junior, senior year.
Right.
So by the time we get to be seniors, there's 25 seniors that were all together freshman year going into our senior year.
That's big, man. And I know about that because I was the only one on my team my senior year to get a football scholarship, and that was to UT Martin. And no Ohio State or nothing like that, but UT Martin. And UT Martin saved me. Thank goodness from UT Martin. But there were so many guys and everybody has these stories of, dude, I played with, whether it's basketball, baseball, hockey, soccer, lacrosse, and you growing up, you play with some people that you're like, that's the best player I ever played with, but they don't even sniff. They don't even get a chance to sniff the field or the court because they either just was full of themselves. They had the work ethic, as the saying goes, hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. Right. And, I had people that I'm like, that's the best player I ever played with against in my life. They're going to the league. And then what happens is, they get caught up. Mm-hmm. And so you guys have 25 guys. Reminds me of Martin freshman year to my senior year. 25 guys for senior year that came in your freshman year, and you guys are just studs. And when it came to that CPR, and for you young folks and young coaches, listen to that. It wasn't about the work that they put in. It was about the camaraderie that they were building together, right? As these incoming freshmen with the CPR camp. Yeah. Right. You're building camaraderie. You said it. These are the guys that I ended up, playing with for 4 years, and it all started just like a tadpole or a sea turtle off the going into the ocean. And so now you guys undefeated your freshman year. Now, some of the players on your freshman team that that just stood out, that you knew, like, aside from yourself, some players on your team or your freshman team at Helix High School that you were beating teams by 50 points. Who were some of the guys that stood out that you were like, they're really special?
Yeah, I think at that age we all think we're very special, right? And we all think that we're going to the league. But we had a lot of talent my freshman year. All those people, we had a ton of talent. There was definitely differentiators. There was people that were faster than others. It wasn't until as I got older into kind of our senior year where you started to recognize, like, okay, there were some younger kids that were coming up that said, okay, these people are just different, right?
Right.
Like they like. Definitely there was with my freshman class. Yeah, there was Darius Douglas, there was Tyler Watkins, there was people that we just knew were just fast and athletic, and we're going to continue to do great things. But it wasn't until at my junior and senior year where I'm like, okay, there's some people that are on our team right now that are just different.
Right. And
So
we'll get there. We'll get there. We'll get
yes.
there. And
So after my freshman year, just a quick backstory. So we at that time you had to be 15 to play varsity. So
yeah.
our varsity team made the playoffs my freshman year, and what they usually do is they pull up JV players to help with the practice squad as they make their playoff run.
Right.
That year they happened to pull me up as a freshman. So I was the only person on the team that pulled up from a freshman to practice with the varsity as they were getting ready for the playoffs. So here I am. I just turned 14, and now I'm practicing with the essentially the guys that I idolize, because before our practice, I'd go out to the varsity practice every single day and I would sit on the sidelines and I would just watch these guys and I would think, wow, they're so big and they're so developed, and I wanted to be like them. And that's what Helix does to you. And that's the tradition that it instills in you, is you want to be these players. You want to emulate them. So I'd go sit on the sidelines and I would watch Kenny Harrison, who at that time I thought he was the biggest human being on this planet. You know, he was 6'2", 230, legs like Saquon Barkley, small waist, and he was a linebacker. And I'd watch him just run sprints after every single practice. And then Jason Clater as a running back, Teron Franklin as a quarterback. I'm like, I want to play with these guys. Like I want to be these guys. So now we go through our freshman year, we ball out. I do well, and obviously I had some training and some practice before that, being able to play up in Seattle, and I get pulled up to varsity, and here I am, this 14-year-old kid now playing and practicing with the guys I was just looking up to for the past season. And I go up there and I'm like, I'm going to prove myself in practice, and I'm going to hit these guys as hard as I can. And that was my goal. My goal was to make them better, but my goal really was to make a name for myself, because I knew my sophomore year I wanted to play varsity and I wanted to start on that team.
My boy, and you this boy, I'm telling you, my dude, bro. Like, this man came out the womb lifting weights, you guys. Jay Cass had come out the womb lifting weights, came out the womb with a chip on his shoulder. And you gotta have something. You gotta have that drive. You gotta have something that drives you, something that motivates you. And that's why I always say, people, you never know who's watching you. You become a role model without even realizing that you're a role model. You're just doing something that you enjoy doing, but it's something that comes with the territory. And a role model isn't what you do on and off the field of play is per se everything, right? Because you're a human being. But we have this light on these athletes, and we forget that they're human beings. But you have these guys that you mentioned. These are not. I don't know any of these guys' name in the NFL or anything like that. So these guys are just, they're your heroes at the time. And so you're watching them, and you guys have a successful freshman year. Does that carry over to your sophomore year? And before we get into that, at this point, J. Cass, is this the only sport you're playing? Are you playing any other sports?
I was playing baseball and I was wrestling. So I was doing, I was playing a sport every season.
Man, staying active.
Yeah.
But of course your love is football.
Yeah. 100%.
Right. So you're killing it on the field. You're doing what you need to do. Now, when it comes to the football, that's one aspect. Now, like you said, Helix is not just known for its athletics; it's also known for its academics.
Yeah.
Where you finding yourself being able to excel in the classroom, because again, this is for the young folks. And I know today is a little different than it was then, and every generation is different. And you're going to school to be a professional. And so academics kind of phase to the back, and it's a lot of little loopholes and stuff to get over now when it comes to academics. But at the time, that wasn't the case. If you're not like, the number one player prospect in the country, you're not getting that type of treatment. So when it came to the academic side of things, were you finding yourself, did you find it challenging, or was it something that you were able to take on and excel in when it came to academics at the Helix High School?
Yeah, I would say all of the above. I mean, Helix in general is a very challenging academic system, and that's one of the reasons why my parents and myself wanted to go there, because Helix is their whole goal and is to prepare the students for college. And
Right.
the graduation and the college transition rate for Helix is exceptionally high, and they do a great job of preparing us academically to go to college.
Right.
So yeah, it was a challenge, but it's such a great school, man. The administration and just the support system, it really felt like a college type environment. We had study hall, we had support groups, we had tutors, anything that we needed to help us excel. Because, like I mentioned, it was a very challenging school academically. You know, it was one of the hardest schools to graduate from because Helix had this thing called the senior project. And going into your senior year, you had to dedicate 60 hours of community service towards like a career that you wanted to go into. And then you had to take that experience and write a 10 to 20 page paper based on your experience. And then you had to deliver that presentation in front of the board. So that alone, this was kind of Helix's, like, everyone knew, like, man, you're going to Helix, you got to pass that senior project. And this is things that people were stressing over. And we had a few people transfer going into their senior year because they just couldn't do it. But it's one of the things that makes Helix so unique is not only are they historically known for their sports, but their academics is through the roof. And that comes from the support system and from the staff and from the administrators that really were role models that helped shape us and give us those tools to be successful.
Hey, shout out to Helix High School. Hey, y'all, you got J Cass. He's still around out there now. Y'all need him on your staff. If he applies, you better hire him. But anywho, all jokes aside, so you guys have you're doing great in class.
Yeah.
You're being challenged on and off the field. You're excelling during this. You're creating these bonds and these relationships. You're winning. Does that carry over your sophomore year? You know, you have this unbelievable freshman team. Now, is your varsity team? They're good too. Now you're done with your freshman season. You know, we got what we call JV football. For those who may not be good enough it's just not their time yet for varsity football. So going into you guys' sophomore year, did you and your class, did you get some playing time, or was it mostly JV?
Yeah, so going into my sophomore year, after my experience on varsity for the playoffs, I actually got pulled up to varsity in my sophomore year.
Right.
So I didn't have the opportunity to stay with my class, and that was challenging and that was difficult. There was some pushback from my teammates, some of my best friends. You know, a lot of people thought that there was some favoritism, but it really just came down to I had the opportunity to go up to varsity and I took it, and I worked hard for that opportunity and I excelled. So they had a great year. They went undefeated again on JV, and for me that year playing varsity as a 15-year-old was a big deal. We weren't the best school on paper. We weren't the best team. We had kind of what we call a Cinderella season. You know, we limped into the playoffs. We barely got in the playoffs, and we made a run, and we actually won the CIF championship that year.
Wow.
Here I am, a sophomore, and going in, I'm obviously the youngest kid on the team, and I knew that I had to go in and prove myself, and I earned a starting role as the starting inside linebacker. I had a significant quad pull the second game of the season, and limped through that and had to overcome that injury for the next 4 or 5 games where I literally was playing on one leg. And we limped into the playoffs and we ended up making a run, and we made a run and we got to finish our season playing at that time Jack Murphy Stadium, where the Chargers played, and we won the championship, and we weren't supposed to. We weren't supposed to. We started the season as a lot of individuals. And during that year, there were some pivotal moments and some tough conversations that we had to have with ourselves. And a lot of our seniors at that time stepped up and had those conversations. And for me, being the young kid on the team, and this goes back to me growing up, I've always been the youngest around everybody, obviously with my two older brothers. So I've always wanted to kind of fit in and be a part of everything. So I was very good at blending in and being a chameleon and being able to bounce to different circles. And I really learned about that also my sophomore year, being around all these different personalities. So it gave me an opportunity to learn from them and learn some of the leadership styles from my teammates. And being able to be a part of that CIF championship, my first one was an incredible experience.
That you winning championships your freshman year. You're playing varsity your sophomore year. You had to leave some of your teammates behind as they play JV. They still go undefeated.
Mm-hmm.
You guys end up winning the championship. So you're just saturated just in winning at this point. You're saturated in winning. You've adopted and you've, bought into the system. And that's a lot of people and a lot of young people, you understand, these are systems, these football, these programs, these football, baseball, basketball, golf, et cetera, et cetera. There are systems. The coaches can draw up the plays. You can practice. You can do things repetitively over and over and over again. But ultimately, it just comes down to execution, right? Execution and drive, execution and will. You only can get taught so many times how to tackle someone. You can only get taught so many times how to block someone. You know what I'm saying? So it just comes down to execution and will. So you're and which relates to your life, relates to your family's life. Execution and will, hard work, execution and will, determination, right? And so now you won your freshman year, you won your sophomore year. You've been trained in Seattle, playing up in the 8th grade, playing with 9th and 10th graders, being blessed through a family friend, going through some challenges, facing adversity when it comes to your mother, being diagnosed with breast cancer, going to a whole nother state without your family, your brothers, your father, your mom, excelling, going to a whole different school that you're not supposed to go to that school. You're going against the grain on everything, and you're finding yourself to succeed based on your mindset. And so you get to your junior year. You guys, does that tradition continue? Does that winning tradition continue for you as you move to your junior and senior year of high school?
Yeah, so our junior year, now I'm getting to play with all my class, right? Now they're coming up and they're coming off an undefeated JV season. I'm coming off a CIF championship where we just had a lot of seniors graduate. And now we're coming up, and yeah, my junior year, we were slotted to make another run.
Yeah.
We were a very good team. We had an incredible running back named Jason Van, who shout out to Jay Van, JVA Athletics over there at Helix. He's one of the coaches there and does an incredible youth program for these kids, really developing these kids with the speed and strength program. And he's kind of the go-to guy right now in San Diego and giving back to the community. Right. But just having a chance to play with him and guys like Travis Watkins, who was a big old lineman, one of the most talented athletic people I've ever seen in my entire life. This guy was 6'4", 320, and ran like a 4.8 40. He was a shot putter, ended up getting a scholarship to USC to play football. But being able to play around all those guys, man, my junior year, these guys were seniors at the time, to play with them and then to have my class come up and play was incredible. Now, my junior year, we didn't win the championship. We actually went up to Division I. So at that time, the divisions were based off of school population. So my sophomore year, we were Division II. And then we got bumped up to Division I because of our enrollment increased year over year. So we ended up losing in the first round of the playoffs to a team called Poway. It's a school up north, and they were a great team. These guys were known for just having some big boys on their team, and they put it to us. And we didn't at that time. We didn't really have the strongest quarterback. My junior year, which opens the door for what we'll get into my senior year. But we were a talented team, but we were missing some components, right?
Correct.
A couple of things, and that kind of leads on to what happens my senior year.
Right. So we get to your senior year, and we get to your senior year, which is your last year. And at this point, like JCast, when did it start? When did it start sinking in for you? Like, okay, look, I want to start getting some people to look at me so I can, college. When did that start like becoming more prevalent for you when it came to your playing career and your, academic career, continuing? What year was that you knew, like, okay, I'm going to get a scholarship. I'm going to get a scholarship.
Yeah, that started my sophomore year, and at that time, it felt so special at that time, getting a letter from a college and having to fill out a information form and send it back. So I was getting tons of those starting my sophomore and going into my junior year. Looking back at it now, they're just letters. And
Yep.
now, as I've gone into my adult life and I've been part of kind of that sports marketing world, I realize now that those are just all marketing letters, and those are things that those athletic departments were just going fishing, right? They're throwing out a wide net, and they were slowly condensing it down. So I thought, yeah, I'm getting letters from all over the place. Going to college and getting a scholarship. This is a real thing. This is something I'm going to pursue. And this is something that kind of fueled me to want to work harder. So every year, as I got more letters and started to do well and get more recognition, I mean, being a starter on the sophomore year was a great confidence booster. Playing my junior year, I was all league, all CIF, had a great season. So now going into my senior year, I'm like, this is real, right? This is my last year. This is time to lay it all on the table. I've worked so hard to get to this point. I've overcome so many obstacles. I had a major quad injury my sophomore year. Played through it, probably shouldn't have, but limped through it and played because I didn't want to miss a game. And now I'm going into my senior year, and we have 25 returners. So I'll tell you something that's very unique about this situation is Helix we had a legendary coach named Jim Arnaiz, and he was my coach on varsity for my sophomore year and for my junior year. At that time, he was, I think, 27, 28 years head coach at Helix. He's one of the most iconic head football coaches in the San Diego region ever. And he decides, this was a father figure, Coach Arnaiz, Coach Van Hook, who's still like one of my mentors, my role models, one of my best friends now as an adult. Coach Ash, these are all the guys that kind of molded me. But Coach Arnaiz was the leader of these guys. And going after our junior year, after we lost in the playoffs at the banquet, he decides to retire.
Whoa.
So he retires, and he had already won like 4 or 5 CIF championships, most winningest coach in San Diego history, most winningest coach in our district. So now we're going into my senior year. We have 27 returning seniors, and we have no head coach. So now they're doing interviews for someone to inherit this historic program with a very talented team. And the crazy thing about this situation, and I've started to write a book on this because this was the year 2000, right? And I've started writing the season of destiny because this really was a very unique situation. So at this time, we're going into our senior year. We have no head coach. The movie Remember the Titans comes out.
Yeah.
And it was a kind of a similar situation, right? Coach Boone comes in, he has all these expectations to win. And it's you win or you're out, and you have this talent. So that was kind of our mentality. So being the returner, I get put on the board to interview the next head coach. So I'm going through the process and interviewing, and mind you, we're going into spring practice and we don't have a head coach yet. Going into spring after my junior year, so we start doing workouts on our own. We start running spring practice. 27 returners, we're all leaders, we're all seniors. We start running our own practices before we have a coach.
Wow.
We started doing ourselves because we knew after we lost to Poway our junior year, something clicked. We knew that we were going to go undefeated in my senior year. We knew there wasn't going to be a team that was going to stop us because, and I get emotional about it, which is crazy. Because these are those experiences you go through, right? These are your brothers. Yep. And now for the first time, these kids that were freshmen, that were 14, now we're 17, 18 years old, and we're playing together for the first time as a unit. So we knew after that loss to Poway, we knew that we were going to be unstoppable our senior year. We had a couple key positions we needed to fill, which we'll get to, but we needed to fill a coach first, and we ended up getting a coach, and we ended up starting the season. But it's just crazy to think that going into that season, we had no head coach, and that movie Remember the Titans comes out, and there's a lot of parallels to that story.
Yeah. Shout out to Remember the Titans. Denzel, great job. Great movie. Based on a true story. If you guys have not seen it, check it out. It's an old school, hide in the penitentiary, and she's a young kid, but it's a great movie. They always turned it on, and when we were traveling for college football on the bus, strong side, left side, strong side, left side, but yeah, and this is what, again, this is another reason why, JCast, I enjoy doing this. This is therapeutic. You take you down memory lane to talk about where you come from and some of the people that you've, had experiences with, and these bonds, because we like to, again, we're all tadpoles in life. So you're talking about these are guys from high school. You played college, and you've lived in different states and met so many people, but these group of guys, they stick with you. Right. They're part of your journey, a part of your story. And that's one of the many reasons I enjoy doing this, because, again, it's to uplift, to motivate, to encourage, to educate, to elevate, the viewers, the listeners, to inspire the aspiring. And this is again, your story so far, thus far, unbelievable. But yes, I just had to stop and say that, JCast. I have to do a lot not to get emotional doing this, because sports sports saved my life. It saved my life. It introduced me to work ethic and friendships and camaraderie and accountability and terminology that I had never heard of. Right. And so that's why I love sports. I love the power of sports. And so, but you guys are, you're young kids, and you have taken the initiative to, you're 25, 27 of you, to take the initiative of running drills, not even having a coach. So let's pick up there where we left off. Go ahead.
Yeah. So we end up hiring a coach named Gordon Wood. And he ended up having a personal connection with our principal at the time, Dr. Smith. And he comes on, and we have a great spring practice. And so getting back to the junior year in playoffs, we brought up some players from the JV, but we also brought up a freshman my junior year. And you asked me earlier about, were there anyone that stood out that you just knew were different, right? This was the first time that someone stood out that we knew was different. So my junior year, as we're getting ready for the playoffs, we bring up members of the JV, and then we bring up one kid from freshman, just like myself that year when I got brought up, 2 years before. Right. And that kid's name was Reggie Bush. And we obviously know who Reggie Bush is, one of the greatest players of all time.
One of the best, one of the best, if not arguably the best college football player to ever lace up cleats. Just so a Super Bowl champion, a national champion in college, a state champion, a champion everywhere he's gone. Just shout out to Reggie Bush, family, and all the foundation, everything. Reggie Bush was just that spectacular. But go ahead, back to your story.
Yes. So that was the first time. So he practiced with us. We're getting ready for our playoffs in the junior year. And that was the first time that I saw greatness in person. And he was 14 he was young like myself. Right. But he was different. Here he is going up in practice against guys like myself that are older, that are more experienced. And he's making a lot of people look silly. And for the first time, I was like, this kid's going to be different. This kid you knew was going to go to the league because he was that special, and it was that easy to see at such a young age. And anyone that talks about Reggie that's had experience with them will say the same thing. It's no secret, talent like that's generational. You recognize that very early on. Now it's about the environment and the community around to kind of foster and mold that to make sure that athlete goes in the right direction.
Correct.
So we have a coach, and we go through spring practice, and Reggie now is going into a sophomore year, and we're still kind of missing, we're missing that quarterback position. Right. So we get a quarterback who was on the JV last year. Now he's going into the junior year. His name is Alex Smith. So Alex Smith.
Now you talking about now again, we got to pause for a second. Yeah. Okay, we got to pause for a second. So for the listeners, because you got young people who just don't know these.
Right.
Some people don't know these names. But we're talking about Alex Smith. We're talking about number 1 draft pick. We're talking about San Francisco 49ers. We're talking about, one of the ultimate competitors, Alex Smith. You're talking about, right? You're talking about Reggie Bush, and you're talking about Alex Smith. You're talking about top 3 draft picks in their class, and when they got to the NFL. So you telling me, J. Cass? Oh no, man! You're already playing against some. You top notch. You playing at your freshman year varsity, winning state championships. You're playing against guys who making names for themselves. In college, when you're an underclassman in high school. And you telling me that on your team, on your high school football team, that you had Reggie Bush, J. Cass, Alex Smith. What?
Yeah.
Go ahead, man. I had to shout out to Alex Smith. What an unbelievable story he has as well. Almost lost his life in football. But yeah, man, go back to my mind blown. Boom. And I already knew all this, but every time we talk about it, I'm like, yo, are you kidding me?
We can do some. Bro, keep talking that shit, you just might move some. Apply that pressure.